Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. The 59th year of marriage to my commander husband. At 80 years old, I got up every day at 4 a.m., surviving by picking up trash to feed my husband and son. One day, I accidentally broke my leg and was sent to the hospital. I couldn't even bring myself to spend $10 on a painkiller shot. But when I turned my head, I saw my husband, who was just begging me for grocery money yesterday, holding hands with his old flame, Laura, while paying $10,000 for her hyaluronic acid injections. Turns out he'd been crying poor to me all these years while secretly giving his pension and military subsidies to another woman. The anger gave me a stroke. I told my son to use the money I had worked so hard to save over the years to pay the hospital bill. But he looked annoyed and said, "I already gave all your lousy money to Dad. He used it to buy 5 pounds of goods for Aunt Laura. You've already earned enough to cover my wedding fund. You're useless now. You might as well step aside for Aunt Laura and go die early." He grabbed my hand and forced me to sign the divorce papers, then turned around and helped my husband host a wedding with that woman. I died alone and in misery at the hospital. When I opened my eyes again, I had gone back in time to the day my husband returned from the military, wounded and discharged. He once again asked me to go out and work to support him and our son. I smiled and agreed, but instead secretly went to the party secretary's office to apply for a rural doctor position. From then on, I was done with my husband, Mark, and my son, Jason. I would dedicate myself to rural healthcare. Snapping back to the present, I looked at Mark's annoyed face. He was still handsome, and he matched well with Laura's delicate looks. Meanwhile, I was up before dawn every day, picking through garbage, covered in dirt and stink. My hands and face cracked and calloused. I really didn't look the part of a commander's wife. When he saw my red, swollen eyes, he flinched for a moment, a flicker of guilt flashing across his face. But he quickly hardened his tone and glared at me. "Why are you just standing there? Hurry up and get to the hospital. Bring back a piece of pork tonight. My injury needs braised meat to heal." In my past life, I only found out before I died that the injury he'd claimed was just a shallow cut on his finger. He faked the severity to get discharged and collect benefits. Also, he could be with Laura. He had lied to the military and deceived me for an entire lifetime. But I couldn't be bothered to expose him now. I simply turned and walked out the door. Jason called after me, saying that we'd have guests over tonight, and he didn't want them to see a selfish and toxic mother like me. He told me to spend the night at the hospital instead. I didn't respond. I ran straight to Director Carter's home. "Director Carter, I want to go to the countryside to serve as a rural doctor," I said. He looked at me in disbelief. "But your husband's injured and your son is still young. Your whole family depends on you. Are you really going to leave them behind and go to the countryside?" I nodded firmly. "I'm going to support rural healthcare. My family will understand." He let out a sigh. "Even if that's the case, going to the countryside is easy. Coming back to the city isn't. Our provincial hospital has good benefits and high pay. Your husband is a decorated officer. You're really going to give up being a commander's wife?" "I've decided to become a rural doctor," I said firmly. "Have you really thought this through?" Director Carter asked, trying everything he could to persuade me otherwise. But I simply smiled and responded sincerely, "Don't worry, Director. Nothing can stop me from pushing forward with the mission of expanding access to healthcare." In the end, Director Carter reluctantly approved my transfer request. The official assignment was scheduled to begin in 3 days. As soon as I left the hospital, I rushed home to pack. The moment I stepped through the door, I saw Mark and Laura sitting hand in hand on the heated brick bed. My son Jason was holding the snowflake crisps I had been saving for myself, smiling as he fed them to her. What a picture-perfect family of 3 they made. My heart ached bitterly. So Jason had known about his father and Laura since he was 5, and yet he helped them keep it from me for 50 years. I entered the room with a cold face. The smile on Jason's face vanished the moment he saw me. In a fit of anger, he threw the pastry at me and shouted, "Didn't I tell you not to come home? Why do you always embarrass me?" "That's enough, Jason. Don't be rude to your mom," Laura said in her usual fake, gentle tone, pretending to scold him. Then she handed me the half-eaten snowflake crisp from her hand. He just really likes me. Don't take it personally, Susan. This snack was handmade by Mark and Jason. They spent the entire afternoon making it just for me. You've never had the chance to enjoy something like this, have you? Well, since you're here, why not taste it and benefit from my good fortune? Her voice was teasing, but her eyes sparkled with pride and provocation. I didn't take it. I walked straight toward my luggage. Laura's smile stiffened and her eyes narrowed in the next second. Susan, do you have a problem with me? If it bothers you that Mark and Jason care about me, I can leave right now. But being rude to a guest like this, aren't you making Mark look bad? Mark frowned with displeasure. That's enough. You came home without permission. I'll let it slide for Laura's sake, but go make us lunch now. Mom, you better make lunch for Aunt Laura, Jason demanded. If you don't take good care of her, I'll never talk to you again. We had just paid off the public grain quota, and Mark had given his entire discharge compensation to Laura. We were lucky to even have food. Who was he kidding about some fancy lunch? I remained expressionless. Make your own food. I already ate at the hospital. Mark stared at me in disbelief. Do you have any idea how expensive hospital meals are? You had money and didn't hand it over. Just spent it on yourself. Susan, I used to think you were a hard-working, thrifty woman, but now I'm really disappointed in you. 7 years ago, 1 year after I married Mark, he joined the army. While he was away, I worked full-time, farmed, took care of his parents and our son. I overworked myself into illness, but never spent a dime to treat it. And now, all it took was one meal from the hospital cafeteria for him to say he was disappointed. My heart grew bitter, and I couldn't help but laugh coldly. Laura is your first love. If you want her to eat well, go cook for her yourself. What's that got to do with me? You're a commander, aren't you? Always begging your wife for money. Do you even qualify as a man? His face darkened. Susan Tang, what's that supposed to mean? Are you saying you don't want to live with me anymore? Exactly, I replied flatly. Maybe divorce is embarrassing, but you didn't feel ashamed when you took care of your mistress, so why should I? With that, I walked past him and returned to my room. I finished packing and lay down to rest. Mark asked me to come out and do the laundry. Jason wanted me to help him with his homework. I ignored them both. I was determined. These last 3 days, I needed to preserve my energy and make the best possible preparations for my new post. I wasn't going to waste another second on that father and son. The next morning, I officially stopped serving them. Jason had stayed up late the night before playing with Laura. He didn't wake up until noon. As soon as he opened his eyes, he came out crying and hitting me with his little fists. Why didn't you wake me up? I'm late for school. Bad mom. Make me breakfast and take me to school now. I pushed him aside and rubbed my wrist where he had hit me, my eyes cold. I'm your mother, not your maid. If you think I'm bad, then let your dad take care of you from now on. I ignored his crying and shouting and headed straight to work at the hospital. Mark had no choice but to cook for Jason himself. But he was so used to being waited on by me. The rice ended up burnt. He ended up burning his hand and developed a huge blister. When Laura saw the blister on his palm, her heart ached with pity. She took the initiative to come over and take care of Mark and our son. Once I found out, I specifically requested to stay at the staff dormitory for a few days, so I wouldn't disturb the lovebirds. But Laura had long been spoiled by Mark into a pampered princess who never lifted a finger. She let the cattle into the field where they ate all the newly planted wheat. She cooked one meal and both Mark and Jason ended up with food poisoning and had to be rushed to the clinic. Even though Mark knew she had good intentions and couldn't bring himself to blame her, the truth was she just wasn't fit for daily life. As soon as Jason got out of school, he ran to the hospital crying and yelling, "Dad just got discharged with an injury and you're already abandoning him. Don't you have any sense of loyalty or sacrifice? These past few days I've been late for school, hungry and wearing dirty clothes. My teacher scolded me. Why won't you just come home? Boo-hoo. Mom, please come back." I knew Jason was still young and didn't come up with this guilt-tripping himself. Mark must have taught him to say it. I was changing bandages for a patient and didn't even glance at him. After I finished my work, I asked the security guard to escort him out and told him not to let Jason into the hospital again. The guard looked surprised. Nurse Tang, weren't you always spoiling that boy? Now he's bawling and you don't feel bad at all. I gave a faint smile. People have to pay for their words and actions. Since he thinks I'm so shameful, I'll grant his wish and never go home again. That evening after dinner, I returned early to the staff dorm. Tomorrow morning, I would head to the countryside. Tonight, I had to rest well. But as I approached the dorm building, I suddenly saw Mark downstairs holding Jason in his arms, waiting for me. For the past 3 days, all the responsibilities at home had fallen on him. His eyes were dark with fatigue, and he looked worn out. "Susan, come home," he said. I ignored him and headed for the dorm entrance. But he grabbed my wrist. "For people crammed into one room, it's nothing like the comfort of home. Susan, I know you're mad at me, but don't punish yourself by squeezing into the dorm just because of me, okay?" Jason tugged on the hem of my shirt and pleaded, "Mom, come home. Dad and I brought you snowflake crisps. You haven't even tasted them yet." I nodded slightly. I needed to go home to pick up the rest of my luggage anyway. Besides, it was time to settle things once and for all with Mark. Back at the house, I picked up a snowflake crisp and started eating. Mark immediately said, "Susan, all these years while I was in the army, you carried the entire family on your back. I owe you a huge debt." It seemed that after the last 3 days, he finally realized how much I had endured. But then he added, "My wound has gotten worse. I really can't help with the chores, so when you finish work, please come straight home." "All right." "Yeah, Mom," Jason chimed in. "Hopefully, I won't throw tantrums at you anymore. I know you're tired, but think about it. After work every day, you'll get to see Dad and me waiting at home. Isn't that happiness? You just focus on earning money. Dad will handle the household expenses. That way you won't have to worry so much." That's exactly how he persuaded me in my last life. And what happened? He took all the money I worked myself to the bone to earn and gave it to Laura. For 50 years, I got up before sunrise to farm, then headed to the hospital for work. And after I got home, I still had to wait on both of them. I was so exhausted. I often passed out from fatigue. And yet he built a whole new family with Laura, using my hard-earned money to hire a nanny to take care of her. I still remember when I was 80 and lying in the hospital, I ran into Laura. She was draped in gold and diamonds, so flashy it nearly blinded me. Her face had barely a wrinkle. Meanwhile, I was wearing clothes I picked out of a junkyard 20 years ago, my whole body reeking of trash. I looked straight at Mark. "You're a commander and a disabled veteran. Doesn't the army send you a subsidy every month? Where is it?" He froze for a second, then snapped in frustration. "That's my money. Why are you always questioning me? Can't a grown man keep a little cash for himself?" I let out a cold laugh. "You gave it all to Laura, didn't you? Our family can't even afford a proper meal. And you're out there giving money to another woman." I work myself to death day and night. I was sleeping only 3 hours a night. And instead of showing any gratitude, Mark and Jason ganged up to despise me. Was this what being a man meant to him? Mark lowered his head, unable to meet my eyes. "You already have me," he muttered. "What more could you want? Laura doesn't have a husband to take care of her either. I just wanted her to live a little more comfortably. There's nothing going on between us." I slammed my chopsticks on the table, not giving him a shred of face. "I have you. What good is that? You can't make money. You can't help around the house. What's the difference between living with you and being a widow?" He opened his mouth but had no words to argue back. Finally, he furrowed his brow and looked at me. "I've already explained everything. Why are you still being jealous? Just look at yourself, acting like a shrew. You're nothing like gentle, beautiful Laura. No wonder even your own son doesn't like you." In my past life, every time he compared me to Laura, I blamed myself. I loved him. When he said I wasn't gentle enough, I changed. I worked in silence, earning money, breaking my back for this family. And in the end I died alone and miserable. But now I was done being disappointed. I didn't care how he saw me anymore. All I wanted was to contribute to rural healthcare. I pulled out the divorce petition I had already prepared from my bag. "Sign it." Mark glanced at the document, then shot to his feet, panic flashing in his eyes. You're crazy." Jason looked at me in shock. Mom, what are you talking about? Are you saying you don't want me and Dad anymore? I didn't respond to him. I looked coldly at Mark. These past 7 years, I haven't gotten a single benefit from this marriage, so there's no reason to continue it. You want to take care of Laura? I'm giving you that chance. Mark slammed his hand on the table, his face twisted in anger as he cut me off. Enough. There's nothing going on between Laura and me. Stop slandering us. I gave her money out of pity, that's all. I let out a bitter laugh, but didn't bother arguing. I just grabbed him by the arm and dragged him toward the local convenience shop. It was right after dinner, the perfect time for the neighborhood aunties to gather and gossip. We crouched in a corner nearby, and I motioned for Mark to stay quiet. Auntie Juan was in the middle of her usual animated chatter. That poor woman from the Shun family. She's up at the crack of dawn working herself to the bone. I get tired just watching her. And that husband of hers is always sneaking off to his first love's place. I really want to tell her to get a divorce. You mean Laura? Another auntie chimed in. She just lies around all day doing nothing and still walks around dripping in gold and jewels. The commander must be spending a fortune on her. Look at Susan, another said. Her clothes are patched over so many times even my mother-in-law wouldn't wear them. Mark couldn't take it anymore. He pushed away my hand and stood up, glaring at the women. Shut up. There's nothing improper between me and Laura. The aunties froze for a second. Once they realized he'd heard everything, they didn't bother hiding anything anymore. Laura. One of them spat, calling her by her first name so sweetly. Don't talk to us about innocence. Maybe you can fool your wife, but don't think we're that dumb. And you, Susan, don't let that man anywhere near my husband again, another snapped. Yesterday he was talking about bringing eggs to that widow Jiao. He must have picked up the habit from your man. Their voices grew louder and angrier, and someone hurled a handful of rotting vegetables at Mark. Before long, he was covered in filth, reeking and humiliated. Instinctively, he turned to me for help, panicked. Susan, say something. Explain for me. But when he looked around, I was already gone. A wave of fear surged through him. He shoved his way out of the crowd of angry aunties and yelled, Susan, where are you? But I had already returned home. After soothing Jason to sleep, I picked up my suitcase and headed to the train station to catch the earliest train the next day. The trip went smoothly. After 3 hours, I arrived in Lin County. The team leader greeted me warmly and took my luggage. Nurse Tying, thank you so much for being willing to come to the countryside to care for us villagers. If you need anything, just let me know, the team leader said warmly. I smiled and nodded, breathing in the fresh country air. All of a sudden, I felt an unexpected lightness in my heart. With support from the higher-ups, I was able to open a rural clinic. Every day, many people came to see me for treatment. Thanks to my skilled techniques and rich experience, I quickly earned the unanimous praise of the villagers. Watching them recover and smile again filled my life with purpose and peace. But that evening, just as I locked up the clinic and was heading home, I suddenly found myself pulled into a familiar embrace. It was Mark. He held me tightly, his voice trembling with emotion. Susan, why are you here? I've been worried sick since you disappeared these past few days. The kind of closeness that once made me blush now only made my skin crawl. I shoved him away hard. This is a public street. Watch yourself, I warned coldly. But he didn't care. He stared at me stubbornly and grabbed my hand again. So what? We're husband and wife. It's legal. I laughed from sheer anger, my gaze colder than ice. I already handed you the divorce papers. Don't forget that. I haven't signed them, he said firmly. So we're still married, his tone hardened. Susan, stop acting out. Come home with me. Jason grabbed my leg, his little face full of pitiful tears. Mom, please come home. We're out of food stamps. Dad and I are starving. So they didn't come because they realized they were wrong. They came because they'd finally realized how much they needed their housemaid. I pushed Jason gently aside. Ask your dad for money. The military gives him a monthly allowance. He won't let you starve. Mark stammered. The subsidy hasn't been issued this month. Jason interrupted, exposing him flatly. That's a lie. I saw you spend money to buy Aunt Laura a new dress. I felt nothing. My heart didn't even ripple. I just shrugged and said, "Well, there's nothing I can do then. You two figure out your food situation." I grabbed my medical bag and turned to leave, but Mark caught my arm again. "Susan, can you give me a little money?" I laughed coldly. "Are you joking? You know how little rural doctors get paid." He fell silent for a moment, then gave me a disgusted look. "If the pay is so low, then why are you even doing this? Just come home. If you don't want to work at the big hospital, fine. My army buddy said bricklaying pays more than what you're doing now. Go to a construction site for a few days. Treat it like a workout since you love labor so much." Then he narrowed his eyes. "If you don't agree, don't blame me for handing that divorce application over to the party secretary. I'm a commander. Divorced or not, I can still marry Laura. But you? You've got no decent job. Already had a child. What kind of man would want you?" Before he could finish his sentence, I slapped him hard across the face. "Mark, I'm not throwing a tantrum. I mean it. You'd better hand those divorce papers in yourself. Laura is still waiting for you to marry her, isn't she?" My eyes were filled with undisguised disgust. How blind I must have been in my past life to suffer for this man for 50 years. Mark froze, then gave a crooked, smug smile. "Huh. I knew it. You're just jealous of Laura. She and I are just friends. I promise you'll always be my commander's wife." "Who cares about being a commander's wife?" I snapped. In my past life, Mark constantly used that title to guilt-trip me, saying that I owed it to him to earn money, serve him, and prove myself worthy. I played that role long enough. Not this time. I didn't want it anymore. "Enough, Mark. Stop flattering yourself. I don't care about you and Laura. Whatever's going on between you two, it's not my business. Now move. I want to go home." His face went stiff. Jason came over again, trying to persuade me. "Dad already apologized." "Mom, can't you forgive him? You've forgiven him so many times before." "I won't ever praise Aunt Laura again," Jason cried. "I don't want to make you sad, Mom. Please come home." My chest tightened. He was still a child, but he understood everything. He knew long ago that praising Laura would hurt me, but he did it anyway. Was he doing all this because he knew I loved him, so he could keep exploiting me, pushing me until I broke? I took a deep breath and gave a faint smile. "I didn't ask for custody in the divorce application. I'm not your mom anymore. Do whatever you want. If they liked Laura so much, then fine. I would step aside early and give them their precious Laura 50 years ahead of schedule." My voice was flat without an ounce of warmth. And from the firm look in my eyes, they finally realized I truly meant to leave. I thought they'd be happy, finally rid of the mother they thought was a constant embarrassment. But in the next second, both of them, father and son, had tears in their eyes. In perfect unison they said, "We don't agree to the divorce." "You don't agree?" I said sharply. "Then I'll see you in court. I'm divorcing you no matter what." With that, I turned and ran straight home. The next morning, as soon as I opened the clinic, a villager came in and said, "Nurse Tang, the team leader is looking for you." I went over only to see Mark and Jason already sitting in the office. The moment he saw me, Mark's eyes lit up. "I already told your team leader that you're quitting. Susan, come home with us." He reached out to take my hand, but I slapped it away. "Don't touch me." I immediately turned to the team leader and said, flustered, "Captain, don't listen to him. We're in the middle of a divorce. We'll have no connection very soon. He doesn't get to decide anything about my work." I was so anxious I was babbling, afraid the captain might misunderstand. I rummaged through my bag and pulled out the divorce application. But before he could take it, Mark snatched it from my hand and ripped it into shreds. "I already told you I don't agree to a divorce," he said. "You'll always be my wife." I was shaking with rage. He just stood there with a smug grin and turned to the captain. "Be fair, Captain. I'm a disabled veteran with no ability to work, and our son's still young. And she just runs off to the countryside by herself to live a carefree life. How irresponsible is that?" But the team leader ignored him and looked directly at me. "Susan, what do you want to do?" Before I could answer, crying broke out in the hallway. Laura entered the room dramatically, tears streaming down her face. But Mark didn't look at her the way he used to. His brows furrowed instinctively. What are you doing here? Laura collapsed to her knees in front of me, sobbing. Susan, please stop clinging to Mark. The one who's unloved is the real third wheel. Mark and I truly love each other. Mark's face turned dark. He glanced nervously at me and scolded her. Laura, don't talk nonsense. I've always just seen you as a friend. I don't believe you, she wailed. She must have forced you to say that. Mark, I'm already pregnant with your child. Please, Susan, I'm begging you. Let us be together. I don't want my child to be born fatherless. Without missing a beat, I handed over the shredded divorce agreement. Miss Laura, I said with a sarcastic smile. I'm not the one clinging to Mark. He's the one who won't let go. If he won't divorce me, then even if you're pregnant, you can't take my place. Laura's face went pale. It hadn't occurred to her that it was Mark who refused the divorce. Her body wobbled, and Mark instinctively reached out to catch her. Be careful, he said. Don't fall. But she took the opportunity to collapse into his arms and whispered just loud enough for him to hear. Mark, what if I report to the army that you faked your injury? Mark's expression changed instantly. He shoved her away and shouted. Laura, are you threatening me? After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me. I had no interest in hearing them argue. I simply pulled out my spare copy of the divorce papers and laid them on the desk. Mark, I said coldly, sign them. Just do it for Laura. Left with no choice, Mark signed the papers begrudgingly, clearly unwilling. Jason stood by crying, trying to stop him. No, I want Mom. I don't want pretty Aunt Laura anymore. But no one responded to him. In the end, the three of them, Mark, Jason, and Laura, left dejected and humiliated. I looked at the mess they'd made in the office, feeling a bit embarrassed. Sorry, Captain, I said. You had to witness all that. He waved it off kindly. It's nothing. Every family has its own problems. As long as it's resolved, that's what matters. Go on back to work. He didn't hold it against me, just gave a generous wave. As I returned to the clinic, I saw Ryan sitting on the front steps. The moment he saw me, he stood up quickly. I heard the captain called you over. Is everything okay? Ryan was the wealthiest man in the village and a frequent visitor to the clinic. I smiled and shook my head. It's fine. Everything's settled. He breathed a sigh of relief, then blushed a little and asked, We're butchering a pig tomorrow. Want to come over for a meat feast? I sighed silently. Ever since I came to the countryside, Ryan had been looking out for me. I wasn't blind. I knew what he meant. But after the failure of my last marriage, I had no desire to even think about remarriage. So I declined gently. I already have a few patients scheduled tomorrow. It wouldn't be convenient. He looked disappointed but didn't push. All right, he said and walked away. The next day at noon, I was having lunch with the patients all gathered around sharing a big pot of food when suddenly I smelled the rich aroma of pork. Ryan walked into the clinic holding a bowl. Susan, eat some pork. You've been working so hard these days. You've lost weight. The patients immediately started teasing. Ooh, look at that. Old Ryan has a thing for our nurse Tang. Bringing pork to win her heart, huh? Trying to steal her away from us. We don't approve. I couldn't exactly turn him down in front of everyone. So I smiled awkwardly, took the bowl, and headed to the backyard. Ryan followed me. Once we were alone, I stopped and turned to him. Comrade, I'm not considering a relationship right now. He nodded. I understand. I went to see the captain yesterday and heard a bit about what you've been through. I get it. I'll wait until the day you're ready. His words stirred something in my chest. I didn't know what to say, but before I could respond, a sharp voice called out behind me. Susan Tang, what are you doing with another man? I turned around and saw Mark and Jason standing there. Mark stormed over and grabbed my wrist, his eyes bloodshot. So, this is why you've been so determined to divorce me. You're seeing someone else. How long has this been going on? I knew he was furious, but I didn't want Ryan to get dragged into this. I shook Mark off hard. What the hell is wrong with you? Not everyone is as shameless as you and Laura. Ryan stepped in front of me protectively, trying to reason with him. Commander Shen, you and Nurse Tang are already divorced. Mark didn't let him finish. He punched Ryan square in the face. I'm still a commander. You've got some nerve trying to take my woman. I screamed and rushed over to check on Ryan, panicked, inspecting his face for injuries. Mark was completely unhinged. Susan, how could you care about that guy? I'm your husband. Jason, sensing the mood, quickly ran up and tugged on my sleeve. Mom, go check on Dad, okay? He hasn't been sleeping well. He misses you every night. Once I was sure Ryan wasn't badly hurt, I finally turned to face them. You and your dad got what you wanted. You both adore Aunt Laura. Now you've got her, so what's there to be upset about? Jason looked aggrieved. But Aunt Laura doesn't know how to cook. She doesn't wake me up for school. I don't like her anymore. Mark chimed in too, almost sheepishly. Yes, Susan. Laura's all looks and no use. She can't do anything. I really regret it. Come back home with me, okay? Let's live a good life together from now on. Mark said Jason is still so young. Can you really bear to let him grow up without a mother? Jason's eyes were red as he looked at me pitifully. But I didn't soften, not even a little. I would never forget how in my previous life he had held my hand and forced me to sign the divorce papers. One mistake like that was enough for a lifetime. I slowly shook my head. I'm doing just fine here. I help a lot of people every day. I'm not going back to be your housemate again. You regret it now only because Laura is harder to manipulate than I was. Mark looked stunned. Susan, it's not like that, he said, shaking his head in panic. I really know I was wrong. I did ignore you because of Laura, but I see that now. As for the child, it was a mistake. I was drunk. She seduced me. I never meant to betray you. Shut up, I snapped, furious. Every word out of his mouth only disgusted me more. You lied to the military about your injury just so you could mess around with Laura. You've been sending her money every month. Don't you dare say you don't have feelings for her. You need to give it up. We're already divorced. I'm never going back with you. And if you keep harassing me, I'll report your falsified medical discharge. Mark's face turned ghostly pale. He staggered back, speechless. Jason had never heard me speak so harshly to him and his father. He burst into frightened sobs. I didn't have the energy to deal with them anymore. I turned to Ryan and softened my voice. Let's go. He nodded, and I helped him out of the clinic. We walked away together. Behind us, Mark murmured in disbelief, Susan. But I didn't stop. Not even once. He stood there watching me and Ryan from behind, his heart shattered. And in that moment he finally understood. He had truly lost the caring, devoted wife he'd taken for granted. A few days later, the village mailman brought a letter to the clinic. It was from the hospital director inviting me to his son's wedding. I asked Captain's son for a day off and returned to the city. Not much had changed there. After the wedding banquet ended, I instinctively walked back toward my old house. But before I even stepped through the gate, I heard shouting from inside. I told you I wanted braised pork. This is disgusting. Redo it and you get out there and sweep the yard, useless freeloader. All you do is eat. Jason didn't dare talk back. He wiped away tears as he swept the yard. Mark tried to soothe Laura with a submissive tone. There's no pork. We don't even have any more food stamps. We're down to wild greens. I gave you my military stipend, didn't I? Can you return it so I can buy pork? I used that money to go to the movies, Laura said shamelessly. Then she exploded. You dare ask me for money? What do you think I made of cash? Spit it out. What else are you hiding? You had money to buy stationery to write letters to Susan. Before the divorce, Mark couldn't stop thinking about Laura. After marrying her, he started writing letters to me. That's the kind of man he was. Always wanting everything, never satisfied. I didn't go inside. Quietly, I turned and went back to the countryside. When I arrived, I found Ryan waiting outside the clinic. You must be tired, he said gently. I just bought fresh milk. Have a glass. I smiled and shook my head. I just had a big meal. I'm good. He looked a little disappointed, but quickly perked up. All right, then I'll go clean your house. You focus on saving lives. I'll handle the rest at home. Deal. Deal. I said. His eyes lit up, humming a tune. He jogged off down the road. Watching his back, I couldn't help but smile. Then I turned and began seeing patience. Maybe this peace, this purpose was what happiness truly looked like.